Hello world and welcome. I'm Don, and in this video I'm going to spend a bit of time with this image both in Photolab 8 and also in Nik Collection 7, just having a little bit of a play. So this image is starting out like this. It's quite dark. I did not set my white balance, but we're going to try and take this to somewhere interesting. So this was a promo shot that I did for a play that I was in last June. And there was a physical theater group as a part of that play. It was the play was The Tempest, if anyone is curious. And they sort of played some magical creatures in various ways throughout the play. And so I want to give this overall a kind of a magical feeling. So that's what we'll be working towards as we go. Like I said to start with, I did not really... I shot it dark because I wanted to try to keep some semblance of detail in this back bit of the lighted area. And I didn't really worry about my white balance because I knew I could do it later being a raw image. So let's jump in and have a play. I'm going to, like I said, have a go in Photolab first, and then we'll move on over to Nik and just kind of have a bit of a play there. Now, I processed this image however long ago that was, 6-7 months ago. And, and obviously I made some choices at that time. Today, I'm going to be kind of headed in a similar direction, but I'm not exactly trying to recreate what I did before. Basically, I just want to work with the image and bring it round to having it feel a little bit magical. So I know it's a bit of a weird brief, but let's give it a go. And this might be a little bit of a longer one because I will be sort of experimenting and playing along the way. But again, from that angle, it might be an interesting one. So give a watch if you're keen. Right, so let's dive in and start out with this image. First of all, I'll just get rid of this guy here and maybe pop this up here for now. Just get him out of the way a little bit. So obviously we need to start out. I'm going to start out with color, to be fair. So I always like to start out with changing the rendering if I'm going to. And in this case I am going to. And I will just put it on the camera rendering for the Nikon Z6. This one was in particular. That will be fine for this. I think the very first time I did it, I used a Fuji profile, but I think the Nikon profile will use just fine. So we'll just go ahead with that. And then, of course, I'm going to fix that white balance, which is quite atrocious. Now, I don't really have anything to click on, and I've, over time, come to a space that I'm happy with just through sliding my sliders until I find something that I like. So I know that I'm headed up quite warm. Like in the vicinity of 11,000-12,000 kind of deal. And I'll probably pull a little bit of that magenta out. Might just bring that back down to closer to 0 for now. And we'll see how we go as we go. All right, so still dark, but we're off to a bit of a start here. So now I'll come over to my light tab and I'll put on good old smart lighting. It's going to pick things up a bit. And I'm going to put on spot weighted, and of course straight away it tells me that no faces were detected because the faces are fairly small in the picture, and the face detection in here is not like super, nowadays cameras are getting to the point where they would pick up these faces just fine, but Photolab is not quite as sensitive to finding faces as that. So I'll just throw some squares on a few faces. And I reckon that'll be great. Now I might just see what if I do a medium here, just pick that up a little bit. And that's probably a nice place to leave it. Now I could just go ahead and click on my tool again to deselect it, but a great tip that it's one of my favorites, so I like to share it as often as I can. If I press escape when I'm on any tool, it will deselect that tool. So I'm back to my normal now. Right, so we see the histogram here is pretty spread out. And I think maybe I'm going to try to draw my highlights in a little bit just to protect those a little. I'm going to bring up my midtones a bit. Might bring up my shadows a spot or two. And because I'm going to be continuing to process this and I'm going to take it into Nik Collection, I think I also want to have a bit of space. So I'm going to actually raise my blacks a bit too, which is going to leave me looking a little bit washed out here. But hopefully we can reverse that and kind of dial that in as we continue. So I'm even going to go just a little touch further, and I think maybe a little touch further with my highlights as well, just to bring those both in on each end. Going to turn that on, a little clear view. Don't know if I'll leave it on. I'm just going to turn that down. No, I'm not going to leave it on. It was worth a check. So moving on to contrast, I'm just going to have a quick peek, maybe put that on and up the fine contrast a little bit. Yep, I'm liking the look of that quite a bit. And I might, just because again this histogram is very spread out, I might just drop this just a touch. I know I'm kind of just trying to work on the balance there, and I know it is looking a little bit washed out right now, but again, hoping to address that as we go. And I'm going to come over here to my horizon tool and just straighten that out. I'm kind of looking at the bridge and the telephone poles, but essentially I want them to feel like they're, I don't really, because the telephone poles and the bridge I'm going to remove, but I just using that as a bit of a guide as I'm starting out. But mostly I really am interested in having them looking right. So maybe go about there. And I'll just go ahead and put the auto crop on to get rid of those black borders. And that's all good there. And really, I think that's got me to a place that I'm happy with at this stage. So I think we'll slide on over to Nik Collection, to Color Efex, and have a play with it in there. Of course, from here with my film strip view closed, I won't be able to see it, so I'll just drag that up. There we go, that'll do. And I'll come over here to my Nik Collection button. I'm just going to double check my export settings. Yep, so it's set to export as a TIFF 16-bit. The reason I was checking that is because I often go back into Nik with a file that I've worked on before, and in order to be able to get at the work that I've done before, you want to, in that case, do export selected file without processing. So I just need always to double check because it's easy for me to miss. Alright, so here we are in Nik, and like I said before, I'm just going to have a bit of an experiment, a bit of a play with this. I know that I want to give it kind of a bit of a magical feeling, whatever that might mean, and we'll kind of see as we go what that means to me in this moment on this day. But I don't have an exact plan. I know a few filters that I'll probably dive into, but I'm going to just kind of have a look and have a wee little bit of an experiment. So might take a little longer than usual, but also could be interesting. Follow along if you're keen. So let's start things off. I'm just in the filters area on the side here, and I'll just be using the base filters and using this wee plus icon here to add things along. So coming down, I'm going to add a little touch of Brilliance Warmth. I'll have that be my first one, and I'll just go in here and maybe pop on about there, I would say, ish. Yeah. Saturation, I'm not going to add too much there. So, yeah, I don't want too much. I'll add a couple of percentages, but I don't think it's going to make too big a difference. So not a huge difference here, but I just think that it just gives it just a little bit of a warm glow. Basically, my approach through here, I'll generally try to be a little light-handed as I'm going, and hope that the different effects add up to something that I like in the end. So coming down, I know that I want to experiment with classical soft focus, so I'm going to go ahead and click plus on there, because to me that gives it that kind of a magical feeling, especially with the glow of the light and whatnot, and I'll look to enhance that a little bit more later on as well. I guess I'll just have a quick peek at the methods here. So there's that's soft focus 1, diffusion. Oh, it's a tough decision. think I maybe will just go with soft focus 1. Yeah, I'm going to take it off the people a little bit though. So I'll just grab a control point and I'm going to hold Alt while I click it down. And I'll just make this a bit bigger. And I'm going to just use these tools here. I'll press M on my keyboard so you can see what is part of that omission mask right now. So the skin is being omitted. I'm just going to generalize those a little bit more. So I'm just dragging these luminance and chrominance sliders down to make them, you know, if I go all the way, you can see it'll just be a fuzzy. But I'll bring a bit of it in. But I'll generalize them more. So we'll go about to there. Press M on my keyboard again to make that go away. I'm just going to turn off and on the classical soft focus. Cool. I can maybe just do that a little touch more too. I'm going to press M on my keyboard one more time. And I'm going to just turn this off and on one more time. Nice. All right. I think I am happy enough with that for now. So we'll call that good enough. I'm going to come down here a little bit more. Where am I at? Color Stylizer. Let's have a look at what's possible in Color Stylizer. And just a little, you know, if you've not used Nik much, you just, to me, it's like super important that I continue to use these plus symbols. There may be other ways to do it, but I know that I occasionally accidentally overwrite a filter. So I'm working with a filter and then I go ahead and click on another one and it overwrites the one that I just had hold of or that sort of thing. So I just always stick with this plus symbol there. But let's have a peek. So what we got, it's got kind of a sepia-ish tone here. And we've got contrast increase, we've got saturation increase. It's interesting. Obviously, it's not, you know, quite right for the image, but what I'm wondering is if a simple, like, I do kind of like the tones, so what would happen if I just did something more like that? And how do I feel about that with the colors and the contrast? Actually quite cool. I think I like that quite a bit. And, you know, and I'm not doing too much with the settings. I have a wee play if I want to, but it really just depends on how it looks and what I want to try to achieve with that filter at any given time. So, color stylizer, contrast color range. I don't think so. Cross process, dark contrasts. I was pretty sure this was one of the ones when I said about, you know, that there were a few that I might want. A darken, light, and center was one that I might like to do. So I'll go ahead and pop that on. And I think, so it's taking the center luminosity up 25%, and it's bringing the border luminosity down 50%. Both of those are probably a little bit stronger than I want for this image right now. Let me just off and on it. Not too much though, but I think what I might do rather than touching these sliders is just decrease the overall opacity of the tool on the image at large. I'll try 50% maybe. Nice. I really appreciate the difference that is making. So I'm happy with that, and I'm going to go ahead and move on. Let's see. Duplex, the various film effects, which, you know, definitely have their place. I'm a bit curious about fog. All right, so with the fog, I think what I will do is just methods. Does it matter to me, the method? Let's see what I get. No, I think I'm happy enough with one. It's a fairly just sort of generalized haze over things. So I'm going to drop the intensity a bit, like maybe to about there-ish, and I'm going to just add in a control line to add it to the bottom only, kind of let it fade out a little bit there. I'm going to just press M on my keyboard. That's very very specific, and I want it to be a bit more general, so I'll do that and that. I guess what I also could do is just grab this and place this somewhere where it's going to be a little bit more covering as well. So I've just grabbed this little eyedropper, which allows me to, rather than have this be the point that it selects, I can choose what the point that it selects is. That's what I've just done there, and I've also sort of generalized the, but a little bit of, we'll leave a little bit of difference because it might just make it might help to sell the fog effect to have it blending in slightly different in slightly different places. So great, press my M key again. Just bring that intensity down. Just takes a little bit of the contrast edge off of that foreground, which I am interested in. I don't know if that's something that I'm going to keep entirely. Maybe there. That feels fairly like I can barely notice it, so turn that off. Turn that on, but it is making a difference to the contrast in the foreground. So let's leave that there. Great. So now let's see. Glamour Glow, global adjustments, graduated fog. Oh, we had graduated fog there. I probably could have just done that one. Graduated neutral density, HSL, high key, image borders, Indian summer. Just curious about this. I'm going to just add an instance. Now, obviously, that's done a lot to the image. You know, it's taken things that were green and kind of shifted them heavily towards reds, which is kind of interesting. Can take them even more there. More yellow. Interesting. So what I'm curious about with this, and I don't know that I will keep it, but what I'm curious about is if I take a control point and put it over here where things are, you know, kind of meant to be a little bit cool. Just have a little bit of a tweak with these just to try and get it to sit more where I'm keen on, and just see, do I like it? I do. It's adding a little touch of extra richness in that. And I'll just drop one there. I'm also curious. That's still selected. I'll just drop one here. Curious about that down here. Now the one thing I notice, I think I kind of like it here and here. I feel like it makes this extra stand out, and it's not. It's a little bit scrubby. So I'm gonna just back up to this one. Oops. Clicked twice. It caused me some issues here, and I'm just going to maybe add a little bit of it there, but maybe not quite so much. And let me just do. Yeah, I think that's kind of neat. Now I think we're probably getting near the end of things that I'd like to do with this photo, but I'm just gonna have a quick, pastel. A little smooge of pastel might be interesting, and definitely the pro contrast. I always love to do a little bit of that, and possibly a little skylight on that sunny bit. So let's try those three things. So we'll do pastel first of all. And pastel, I just kind of always like the look of just a touch of it in there. Let me see. Turn that off and on. And on. Ah, well, you know what? In this instance, I don't. So pastel goes. I often do use pastel, and I often like the way just a little bit of it looks, but in this instance I don't. I'm going to try a little skylight on this just to add it up, and possibly this whole top bit actually. So let's do this with it. Let's grab a control line and let's bring that down that way. And again, let's generalize these a little bit. I probably can just do that by let me just see what the impact is. Yeah, yep, I like that. I like that. Nice. And we'll just finish off with a quick pro contrast. See what that does for our situation. Again, I've said before, and I will say again, this is hands down one of my favorites. So let's see. Take it a little far, first of all. Nice. Just looking around the image, just seeing different bits and how they might be being impacted. Yeah, nice. I like that. Just going to see what this does for my eye. Do I like that at all? Not a big deal. I'll put a little on for good measure. And then I'm just going to go ahead and have a peek at that. Yep, and no, I do not like that in this instance. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure that my non-destructive edits are on. So if I want to make any changes, I can. And I will click apply, and that will take me back to DxO Photolab. And here we are back in Photolab, and of course this is the image that we sent across to Nik Collection, and this right here is the result. And my hope had been to have it be, so wait, let's bring that down, to have it be a little bit magical feeling, and I feel like I've kind of hit on that. I feel like this might be a little bit too warm, a little bit too yellow, but that's always the case for me when I'm, because this one I just went in and had to play. I'm almost never satisfied after my first go. I almost always come back the next day and think, you know what, I need to shift this, I need to change this, etc. Alright, so I'm just going to cut in here with a little last-minute amendment. Just like I suggested in looking at the image, I was thinking to myself, that saturation's gone a little rich. And I noticed when I was watching back the footage from my first recording that it was around the Pro Contrast filter that kind of just jazzed up the saturation just that little bit more. So I didn't bother going back into Nik Collection to correct that. This, I believe, it's only compare before and after. Yeah, so this is the corrected. So it was a bit juiced up with these yellows here, and I just took a little edge off it. And I did that via the technique of, if I come over here to my all channels, I dropped the saturation by 15 and then I upped the vibrancy by 20. It's just a neat little trick that sees things not go flat, but it takes the edge off of saturation sometimes. And then from there, I sent the image over to Photoshop, where I did a couple of things. Just drop that down. I used content-aware fill mostly, and then down here in the real tricky bit, generative fill, and then up here, content-aware fill as well, just to tidy up the power lines, the power poles that were here, and this extra bit of scrub that was here that I didn't overly like. And then I added sort of a sense of sun coming from up here. So I did that in Photoshop. And then when I came back here, I was thinking to myself that these blues were a little bit dull, and that might look nice with those bumped a little. So if you look at this, I just jazzed those blues up a little bit. And I also did a slight amendment to my surface over here that looked a little bit like the repeat was a little bit too much. It caught my eye, so I just broke that up using the heal tool over here. That's just, if we go show masks, yeah, there we go. It's just this, copying that up just to give it some slightly different texture. In terms of the blues, just for a quick explanation of those, I came to my local adjustments. Just going to scroll up here, and I did a hue mask and basically grabbed those blues. You can see it's actually quite wide, but all that was getting was these shirts and a little bit of the pants. And then once I had that, I headed on down to the HSL space, and I came into this blue space right here, and I bumped my saturation, and I also bumped my luminance. And that did, let me before and after that. And that did that. So that's all good. So I've done those two things, and then of course you will have seen that I also put a wee little frame on it, and that is the final edit. Hope you like it. Cheers. Bye-bye.